Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Okay, so I'm doing the program yesterday, and they're talking about Roy Moore, which I delayed even talking about until when, the third hour? I had some brilliant stuff to say about Trump and the Chi-Coms and Xi Jinping and the North Koreans. And by the way, talk about a major confirmation. Hang on for that. But, so we get into Roy Moore stuff, and I came across a little interesting factoid, and I threw it out there, and it has sent the drive-by media into near conniption fits. I said, did you know that when all this stuff was happening before 1992, Roy Moore was a Democrat? That's it. That is it. And it's amazing now there are people who think that was a defense of Roy Moore, and that I, El Rushbo, was trying to point out that the hypocrisy was that since he was a Democrat and it all happened when he was a Democrat and nobody cared about it when he was a Democrat, that somehow this is a defense of whatever he's alleged to have done today. And it was just a throwaway line. It was a little interesting factoid. Listen, grab audio soundbite number 9. This is CNN International last night. The co-host John Voss speaking with Loyola Marymount University's Global Policy Institute President Michael Genovese, no relation to Kitty Genovese, about allegations about Judge Roy Moore during a discussion about continued conservative support for Moore. I defy anybody to find where I have even gotten anywhere near support or outright condemnation. I have handled this like I handle all of these things. I back off and wait to see what the truth is. I have my opinions about what is being done and how the reporting is being handled, but for crying out loud, something about this hit a nerve with these people. I'll tell you what it is, folks. I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. Here's the soundbite first. Listen to this.
There's still support for him on conservative talk radio. Rush Limbaugh, in particular, he offered up another defense of Roy Moore, which was bizarre.
Did you know that before 1992, when a lot of this was going on, that Judge Moore was a Democrat? You didn't know that? How about all these people now? Oh, yeah. Everybody here knew about Judge Moore. Oh, yeah, hey, but good old boy waiting on about Judge Moore for long. While he was a Democrat. Nobody said a word. When he supposedly was attracted to inappropriately aged girls, he was a Democrat.
Michael Genovese.
Well, that's it. The case closed. I think we now know that there's no more to say.
Why are these people so upset? This is just one instance. I mean, this is all over the Hill.com today. I mean, it's in a lot of drive-by media locations. I go, what about this has them all so bugabooed? If it's such an asinine comment, and if it's a defense, why spend so much time on it? A, it wasn't a defense. There hasn't been any defense. But I'll tell you what's going on. If you take a look, and we mentioned this yesterday, too, have you noticed, ladies and gentlemen, that well over 90, maybe 95% of all of these men that have been accused of all of this perverted behavior are Democrats and liberals in good standing. And the stories continue to pop up every day. There is more and more information being released about additional guys, some of them at universities, now some in the United States Congress, Hollywood, of course, hedge funds, big business, and it's stunning how much of this behavior is tied to Democrats. And so I came along innocently in the third hour of the program. You know, this Moore guy used to be a Democrat back when all this, and the Defense League jumps into gear and immediately has to somehow swat this down, when it was a mere observation. Something tells me that there's a lot of people wound very tight or tightly out there, because this story, it is incredible when you sit back and simply recall. Every day it seems there is a new story involving inappropriate behavior towards women by guys who are liberals or who are Democrats or obviously who are both. And it's I have 3 different stories today on Bill Clinton and how it's time that they are the drive-bys, it's time that we stop giving Bill Clinton a pass. And everybody's got the wrong idea about what's happening with this effort. This is not about coming clean and owning up. All of this 2020 hindsight on Bill Clinton is not about that at all. This is about people who are trying to save face. These are people who, throughout the 90s, defended Bill Clinton, and not only defended Bill Clinton, but attacked the women who came forward. And they gave him a pass, and they're writing today about how that was a mistake. And they're doing that for 2 reasons. A, to save face, and then to supposedly inoculate them from charges of hypocrisy or irony by now going after anybody they can find on the Republican side who may be guilty of this kind of behavior. Because after all, if they're going to open up and start firing all barrels on any instance of conservative or Republican men alleged to have behaved this way, the elephant in the room is Bill Clinton out there and his past that they all gave him. So they've got to get that out of the way. So they now have to go back in time, back to the mid-'90s, and admit their mistakes and say that they gave him a pass and shouldn't have, and maybe even acknowledge that giving Clinton a pass sent a signal to Hollywood men and others. I mean, if Nina Burley from Time Magazine's out there and is saying, Mr. Clinton, I would give you a Lewinsky as a thank you for keeping abortion legal. Well, if you're a Hollywood actor and your purpose in life is to get as many women bedded as you can, you learn the lesson very fast. Come out, become the biggest publicly pro-choice guy you can, and women will appreciate it and love you, and that's half the battle. And there's no question that giving Clinton a pass sent a signal to a bunch of other people, hey, if the big dog is going to get away with it, not only get away with it, if Clinton's going to get away with it and be heralded, if Clinton is going to get away with it and be held up as a star, if Clinton's going to get away with it and be allowed to remain the big dog in the Democrat Party, then what possibly could happen to me? So I don't doubt that Clinton being given a pass by everybody, women and men in the media and in Hollywood, contributed to the instances and occurrences of this behavior by other liberal Democrat men. So now enter Judge Moore. And they want to destroy Judge Moore, and they want to take him out for a host of reasons. Chief among them, I don't believe, is his alleged behavior. I think they want to get rid of Roy Moore because we just can't allow somebody to get elected to the U.S. Congress who doesn't think like everybody else in the U.S. Congress does. We can't have that. We can't have all this oddball, weird thinking. We need to keep electing people that are going to come here and not really change anything. That's why they're trying to get rid of Trump. He is the quintessential outsider, and they simply can't allow that. They can't accept it. They can't tolerate it, and they can't make it look like they're okay with it. So they have to spend however many years that Trump is president, that's how many years they're going to spend trying to disqualify him, trying to impugn and insult, and hopefully get rid of him. It's all about insider versus outsider, establishment versus outsider, and that's what it is with Judge Moore. Judge Moore thinks entirely differently than anybody else in the swamp. And, of course, the swamp doesn't want any changes to the swamp, and the best way to make sure that happens, don't let anybody that thinks differently get in the swamp. You have the added benefit with Judge Moore that he apparently has these oddball behavioral patterns, kind of like Joe Biden has, toward young women. Excuse me, wait till they hear that. And they've got to unload on Judge Moore. Both sides. Conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans have to unload on Judge Moore. But you can't give Bill Clinton a pass when what Clinton did is worse than what's being alleged about Judge Moore. So you have to write pieces about, we We goofed up. We calculated and made an error. We gave Bill Clinton a pass, and that shouldn't have happened. And so now, Matthew Iglesias at Vox, Bill Clinton should have resigned. The Federalist, David Harsanyi, liberals' sudden concern about Bill Clinton's behavior is cynical and self-serving. That's exactly right. And the next one here is from Jeff Greenfield, old buddy, ABC News now, writing at the Politico Mag, how Roy Moore's misdeeds are forcing an awakening on the left. And the subheadline here, years of excusing Bill Clinton's sexual misconduct suddenly seems morally indefensible. Why suddenly? Jeff, old buddy, old pal, why is Clinton's sexual misconduct suddenly morally indefensible? Because it was always totally and completely indefensible. It must work into your playbook to suddenly be outraged by this lifetime of abuse of women by Bill Clinton. And by the way, there is still a person who is co-elephant in the room who so far has gotten a pass. Because it's not Bill Clinton. It is the Clintons. Not only did Bill Clinton do the deeds, not only was Bill Clinton riding dirty, in the immortal words of the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, pastor of the Barack Obama Church, not only was Bill riding dirty, Hillary was riding shotgun. And Hillary was destroying and helping to destroy any of the women who had been ridden dirty, who were coming forth to say so. And so far, we haven't had any news stories from guilty leftists suggesting that it's time we stop giving Hillary a pass in the defense of her husband's mistreatment of these women. Why does Hillary continue to get a pass, but now we're in the process, the left is in the process of throwing the big dog overboard? You realize everything Clinton has done since they left the White House and stole some furniture out of there on their way out. You remember that happened? Ever since then, the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Crime Family Foundation, the Disaster Relief Charity Works, all the numerous trips to Haiti, you know what all that's been about has been to rebuild the Clinton legacy that has been tarnished by the Monica Lewinsky story and other ancillary related stories involving other women. Everything the Clintons have done has been oriented toward erasing those memories and establishing a new legacy so as to facilitate Mrs. Clinton's further presidential aspirations. And now she has bombed twice. And they don't want her to be the face of the party any longer, so they're doing whatever they can to clear the decks to be able to go out and destroy any Republican they find. Because right now the ratio in guys accused of sexual harassment, what is it, about 50-1 Democrats to Republicans? But whenever there is a Republican that pops up on the radar who is accused of this, the drive-bys have to be able to go after whoever that is and destroy them. And they think giving Clinton a pass provides a problem. So in hindsight now they're trying to save face and admit their guilt and their mistakes in giving Clinton a pass. And now they're fixing it. But you notice how they fix goes. We are taking care of our mistakes that we made in giving Bill Clinton a pass so that we can focus on Donald Trump, which is what all of this ultimately is aimed at. Let me take a brief time out. We will we'll continue right into this, folks. Don't go away. Greetings and welcome back. It's the Rush Limbaugh program. Happy to have you here, folks. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Newt Gingrich has weighed in. He said yesterday it's amazing how quickly a lynch mob can form in the wake of the sexual misconduct allegations against Roy Moore. He said this guy's never had a jury trial. He's never been indicted. There's never been a chance to measure up against his accusers. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying it's amazing to me how rapidly the lynch mob can form. Well, it ought not be. This isn't the first time a lynch mob is formed. Lynch mobs in the drive-by media aimed at Republicans and conservatives are very common. And they can be ginned up overnight. And believe me, a lot of people are very cognizant of that. This has been all-encompassing. There's no question. I mean, there's no partisan dividing line on this. I mean, there is nobody out there who wants to give Judge Moore the benefit of a single doubt. Everybody wants to be on the side of universal condemnation. We need the equivalent of the political death penalty, and we need it imposed now. No, I'm not trying to be disrespectful of Newt. I know what Newt is saying here. Can I translate this? When Newt Gingrich says, amazing how fast a lynch mob can form. Because it's not amazing. Lynch mobs, media, Democrat Party lynch mobs are common. What Mr. Newt is actually saying is, how old is Judge Moore? How old is he? 60-some odd? Okay, 70. Judge Moore apparently has been engaging in this kind of behavior for many, many moons. A little Indian lingo there. And throughout his life, by the way, did you know that prior to 1992 he was a Democrat? Throughout his life, the entirety of his life, none of this was either found, or if it was found, if it was known, none of it was reported. And yet everybody's, oh, yeah, everybody knew Judge Moore was doing, like everybody knew Harvey Weinstein was doing what he was doing. Oh, yeah, everybody knows Judge Moore likes the young skirts. Oh, yeah, everybody's... Really? Well, why didn't it make any news? This is not the first political achievement Judge Moore has sought. You know, he is a judge. He is a judge. There were efforts to stop him from being a judge, but it was largely on the basis of the fact that he likes the Ten Commandments on public display. So what Newt's actually saying here is, where did all this stuff come from? If it's been known and if it has been well documented, why has it not been reported until now? And that is a curious question. It is not the defense. I feel embarrassed to insult your intelligence to have to remind you that none of this is a defense, but the drive-bys are in a state here that they are incapable of listening and hearing things rationally. Mr. Newt said that the burden is on Judge Moore to convince those in Alabama he is worthy of being a senator. So I'm frankly a little disappointed in people in Washington who take the totally phony news of the Washington Post and they rush to judgment. He said it would be destructive to set up a write-in campaign in the Alabama Senate race. Fine and dandy. Let me tell you what the real outcome of this is going to be, or one of the potential outcomes of this, regardless what happens to Judge Moore, who was a Democrat before 1992. Welcome, my friends. Great to have you back. Rush Limbaugh, the cutting edge of societal evolution. May I remind you of something about Judge Moore? The reaction to Judge Moore from inside the Beltway was extreme and loud, even before all of the sexual harassment and the other alleged acts of perversion were announced. I mean, when the Republican primary was going on in Alabama, the Republicans inside the Beltway, the Republican leadership, none of them wanted Judge Moore. Even before, again, this is important, even before all of the allegations made about acts that the judge had committed 38 or 40 years ago, even before those had surfaced, this guy was obviously persona non grata. This guy, they didn't want this guy anywhere near Washington, D.C. Not even Trump. Trump didn't even endorse the guy. Trump endorsed Luther Strange, who was the temporary incumbent at the time. So why? What was it about Judge Moore, even before all of this that everybody's talking about now surfaced, that still made the swamp react in abject panic and anger? And remember when Steve Bannon threw his hat in the ring for Judge Moore and made it clear that this was part of an effort to unseat Mitch McConnell as the Republican leader in the Senate? Bannon had made no secret of his desire to replace the Republican leadership and have them replaced by people more attuned to America's Republican populist voters. And Judge Moore was going to be one of the early candidates to attempt this makeover, if you will, of the Republican Party. And the opposition to Judge Moore was just as loud and just as pointed. There was as much of it as there is now. The difference now is that it has become unanimous on both sides and has become very loud. But why the original opposition to Judge Moore? Again, before all of the sex stuff surfaced. Oh, one other thing. I can't help it. It's another little factoid, folks. You know, one of the allegations is that Judge Moore was on a double date with Joe Biden and that they... No, I'd better not try to make a joke. The drive-bys just don't have any humor anymore and take everything literally. Judge Moore is alleged to have picked up the waitress in the diner. After her boyfriend was late, he offered to take her home and instead drove her around back of the diner in the parking lot and locked all the doors, preventing her escape, and then began to sexually accost and abuse her. There are people writing news stories today saying there is no parking lot behind this diner. No parking lot behind the diner. So, where did Judge Moore actually go with the waitress? I'm throwing it out as an open-ended question. But what was it that inspired such opposition to Judge Moore? And by the way, he's not alone. In opposition to any number of other Republican candidates throughout the years. And I'll tell you what it is. As far as the Washington establishment sees it, and by the establishment, let me define it again, not just the parties, but there are certain members of the establishment media, Washington media, that are in the establishment, and there are many of them who are conservative. The establishment is made up of people who believe they are special and elite by virtue of their membership and where they live and their jobs and their importance and their relevance. They're all opinion makers. They are opinion movers. They are policy makers and policy influencers, and they're special. And there will not be people in Congress, House or Senate, who have a different outlook and a different opinion on things. They're not going to permit it. They're not going to permit anybody who thinks differently, anybody who wants to do things differently, anybody who has current disagreements with existing policy and procedures. That's what this is. This is the swamp circling the wagons and making sure that nobody gets in there that is drastically different from those who are already there. Instead, the people that will be welcome to the establishment are those who can be forced either to conform or who will willingly conform upon arrival and end up in lockstep with those who determine what is and what isn't inside the establishment. Now, isn't that what Trump voters are actually trying to do? Isn't it that Trump voters are actually trying to send people to Washington who do think differently, who do have different attitudes, who do have different policy suggestions and solutions, and who are not conformist with the establishment way of doing it? Isn't that precisely what Donald Trump is? Again, this is not a defense of Roy Moore, what he has or hasn't done, because frankly, I don't know. This to me is about that, but so much more. The sex and all that's being focused on because the objective is to ruin this guy and to send a message to anybody else that might want to go to Washington and do things differently. Don't even try, because you'll be next. That's what all of this nonstop search and destroy mission on Trump is. It's not only to get rid of him, to paralyze him, to render him incompetent, but it's to send a message to anybody else who might have a similar idea to not even try it, because you do not want to live through what we will put you through. Their attitude is there's no need to have people here with a different outlook than what we already have. There's no reason to have people here have a different opinion on things. We don't need that. We need people going to conform. We need people who, when they get here, are going to be happy they're here and are going to do what we say they have to do so they can climb the ladder of success in our establishment. We want conformists. We want people who act alike, think alike, talk alike. We want people who represent us well. We don't want these outsiders in here. And that's why the opposition to Judge Moore, even before all the sexual allegations began, he's just weird. The guy's just a creep to that. He's kooky. He's weird. He's a nut. He's an oddball. He's embarrassing. Oh, my. He's everything in the world the swamp would not want to have to say as a member. But on these charges of sexual harassment, I don't care who you are, they're very difficult to defend against. They really are. I mean, you can do it, but I think it's a very successful line of attack. And any man could be accused of this. There doesn't have to be any hard evidence of it. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's false allegations going on here about anybody else. Just saying that this allegation is a real tough one to defend against. And it's always going to be one of the arrows in the quiver. And what's happening now is pure, solid evidence of the effectiveness of it. Now, in practically every case that we're hearing about, almost everybody has acknowledged guilt to one degree or another. Jeremy Piven is still flatly denying, and a couple of others. But nevertheless, it's a tough one to defend against. And even if you successfully defend yourself against it, still it stains and it tarnishes. And those who would wield such allegations are very much aware of this. So Newt Gingrich talks about a new level of lynch mob politics. Meanwhile, there are some Democrats that get away with things. They're not held to account on it whatsoever. One would be Bill Clinton. Robert Menendez is on trial with similar allegations and others, and you can't even find it reported on. He's a Democrat senator from New Jersey, but you can't find hardly any news about it. And Joe Biden, nickname is Handsy, and there's a reason for it. Well, that's just old Joe. So this is something I expect that we're going to see many more allegations of, particularly against people who might act different and think different and want to be different, because these are dangerous times for the establishment. And the more success Trump has, that can be tied to Donald Trump, the more irritated and filled with angst the establishment is going to end up being. So, ponder all that. Now, another brief obscene profit timeout. We'll be back. Do you know that polling data on Judge Moore, this will surprise you, latest I have, yesterday, Alabama Senate GOP candidate Roy Moore leads his Democrat opponent Doug Jones by 6 points in a new poll amid fallout over decades-old allegations of sexual misconduct. 2 allegations from 40 and 38 years ago. Judge Moore leads 49-43 in a Fox 10 poll of likely voters released yesterday. And then Judge Moore holds a 10-point lead over Doug Jones in a new Senate poll. Alabama Senate poll released on Monday, conducted by Emerson College, said that Judge Moore leading Democrat Doug Jones by 10 points. Emerson had Moore, the Republican nominee, leading Jones 55-45 in the poll conducted last Thursday through Saturday. The sample of likely Senate voters was 600, and the automated landline poll had a margin of error of 3.9%. Emerson said that, don't get it wrong here, though, this represents a significant drop in support for Moore, in which he was up as much as 22 points over Luther Strange back during the Republican primary. So that's the latest polling data as of Monday and Tuesday of this week. Oh, and then there's this fascinating little headline from thehill.com. GOP hopes Trump will save Alabama Senate seat. Really? Republicans are looking for President Trump to get them out of a jam and to convince Roy Moore to drop out of the Senate race in Alabama. So far, their calls for Moore to step aside have fallen on deaf ears. So the only way out of this jam is for Judge Moore to step aside and let a Democrat win the seat. That's what we got to do to fix this. Okay, I get it. On the cutting edge of societal evolution, Rush Limbaugh. Very hard to pin down on anything here, even though everybody thinks they can do it. 800-282-2882. And here's Mark in Port Townsend. Where's Port Townsend? Port Townsend what?
That's a little bit west of Seattle.
In Washington. Okay, great to have you with us. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, sir. I hope you're doing well yourself. I just wanted to...
I am under siege today, Mark. I'm under siege. The drive-by media is after me because I dared to point out that Roy Moore used to be a Democrat.
That's why you get paid the big bucks. We're envious of you. So the comment I wanted to make was that as a retired law enforcement officer, Jeff Sessions... I'm speaking as a retired law enforcement officer. Jeff Sessions says he doesn't see any reason to doubt these girls' word. Well, I see a really good reason. None of these girls has been put under oath and made a sworn statement under penalty of perjury. And Gloria Allwood should be able to tell you that is the first thing you do when you get a client. You depose them and you get their statement on the record, and then you go from there. And if they're not willing to make a sworn statement, that sounds really fishy to me.
I take it you don't believe the women, or you just don't have enough information yet to make a determination?
You don't have enough information to make a determination, but speaking as an ex-cop, I find it fishy that nobody has made a sworn statement. And about that yearbook thing, you know, when I was in uniform, you'd get a certain time of year, you'd get kids walking up to you all the time, wanting you to sign their yearbook. Hey, Officer Mark, sign my yearbook. And I was only a cop. I mean, can you imagine how politicians get kids wanting to sign their yearbook? It doesn't mean they remember all of them.
All right, hang on. On the yearbook stuff, folks, for those of you who may not be up to speed on this, and I doubt there are very many of you, there are allegations that some of these autographs and yearbooks are forged. There are conservative blog sites claiming to have evidence by virtue of side-by-side comparison that somebody other than Judge Moore signed some of these things. This is the first I've mentioned that. I'm just reacting to you bringing up the yearbooks. As to, you're upset with Jeff Sessions. He's the Attorney General, and he is, go ahead and acknowledging that he believes witnesses before anybody's been put under oath, and you think that's a little unprofessional.
It sounded to me like he's just trying to tread carefully.
Well, look, this is politics. It has its own court, and it's not a court of law.
But these girls are making public statements.
They are women. They are.
Yeah. Okay. They're making public statements impugning somebody's honor, and somebody with responsibility needs to explain to them, if you're going to besmirch somebody, you got to put it on the record.
No, you don't. Only in court, and this is not in court. This is in politics.
I understand it's politics, but Gloria Allred should know what the law is.
I'm sure she does. That's why she's not in court and is instead on TV.
I just want to make that point, Rush. Thank you.
I'm glad you called, Mark. Folks, I have to tell you, I'm having a little fun with this. Don't misunderstand here, but he's exactly right. But of course, that doesn't. There's a whole different inertia and movement now that is taking place in the world of politics, and there is no room for doubt. I mean, the guy did it. You don't disbelieve the women. I mean, that's something you must subscribe to now. The women don't lie, and except if you're Juanita Broderick, then of course, yeah, that's the point. We'll be back here in just a second, folks. Don't go away. I was having fun with the caller and his obvious consternation by confusing what happens in politics with what happens in the law, which is ironic because the laws are written by these people, but what happens there, apparently the law doesn't matter first and foremost. Find it funny. By the way, folks, I don't know if you have seen them. There are not very many of them yet, and they are kind of widespread out there. But on stories about Harvey Weinstein, there are now, well, in fact, I don't even need to go to a story. Friday, stand by on what I told you on Soundbites. Grab soundbite number 19. What I was going to say is I've seen a couple of stories out there talking about the future redemption of Harvey Weinstein. Have you seen those? Yeah, Weinstein was the reprobate of the year for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. But then I noticed that in the drive-by media and in certain enclaves of Hollywood, there began to be discussions of, it doesn't make any sense because if you look at the body of work that Weinstein put out, it's so beautiful. It's so touching. It's so sensitive. Look at the movies. How do we square the body of work with this reprobate pervert behavior? Signifying that there might be a middle ground in there whereby Weinstein could be redeemed sufficiently so to be forgiven. And then there have been similar stories about some of these other perverts in Hollywood. The desire to maybe have them realize the errors of their ways and seek a second chance. Now, I'm here to tell you that same option will never be offered to Roy Moore or any other conservative Republican who happens to end up in the crosshairs of sexual harassment charges. Look at the pass Bill Clinton got for all of those years, and only now when it's necessary for people to save face. On the left, are they now, in 2020 hindsight, they are faux spanking themselves. They are pretending to beat themselves up over the mistakes they made by giving Clinton a pass. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to go to the audio sound bites. We have the famous intellectual actor Bryan Cranston, who played the character Walter White Heisenberg on the immensely popular Breaking Bad TV show, who not long ago opined that after first ripping Trump to shreds and thinking Trump should be out of office, Trump shouldn't have been elected, Trump's this, Trump's that, he changed his tune and said, you know what, I now hope Trump succeeds. And the left gasped. And he said, that's right, he's the president now. And I don't want him to fail. I think anybody would say, I hope he fails. You know what I would say to that person? F you. Well, there was only one person nationally known for ever having said about Obama, I hope he fails, and that was me, your beloved Guiding Light host, El Rushbo. I know Bryan Cranston is back. Deep thought intellectual leader of Hollywood. He was on the BBC. Arts editor Will Gompertz speaking with Cranston about recent allegations of sexual harassment against Harvey Weinstein and Kevin Spacey. Question, is there a way back? Is there a way back for the Weinsteins and Spaceys of the world?
It would take time. It would take a society to forgive them. And it would take tremendous contrition on their part. And a knowingness that they have a deeply rooted psychological, emotional problem. And it takes years to mend that. If they were to show us that they put the work in and are truly sorry and making amends and not defending their actions, but asking for forgiveness, then maybe down the road there is room for that. Maybe so. We shouldn't close it off and say, to hell with him, rot, and go away from us for the rest of your life. Let's not do that. Let's be bigger than that.
There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, because the Weinstein-Spacey redemption phase has now begun. There has to be a second chance. We can't just say rot and go away for the rest of your life unless it's to Donald Trump. But to these other paragons of great entertainment and arts value, we must afford open-mindedness and second chances. As long as they admit that they're genuine screw-ups, as long as they admit that they're reprobates, as long as they admit that they're lucky to be breathing air, we'll give them a second chance. As long as they spend enough time and dig deep and admit to themselves what a bunch of human debris they have been, we can get them back. We should be open to this. Yes. What do you think? 6 weeks of rehab and we can bring them back? I'm just telling you. And you're going to soon see, if you haven't already, the stories, probably Washington Post, New York Times, the beauty of the work. Look at the substance of the Weinstein movie catalog. My God, it's some of the most beautiful, moving stuff we've ever seen. How do we square the guy who did that with what we know that Ashley Judd and the others said about him? No, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a new meme out there today. There's a new narrative, and that is that sexual harassment isn't partisan. I beg to differ. Everything is partisan when the drive-by media and the Democrat Party are involved. Everything is. And because it's partisan, there isn't sameness or equality in the way people are treated. And I guarantee you, second chances for Weinstein and Spacey will not be offered to other perps. Cosby? Well, Cosby, that's, Cosby is a different situation altogether. I mean, Cosby doesn't have much more value to contribute. We pretty much got the catalog of Bill Cosby's work already. And Cosby has not shown any contrition. Oh, it's very, very important. Cosby has continued to double down, deny it, and so forth and so on. But we'll just see. Now, ladies and gentlemen, moving off this stuff for a minute, we're going to come back to it because the Bill Clinton aspect of this is, I'm still not through addressing and dealing with that, but there are other things happening out there, and I don't want them to slip away and fall by the wayside. CNBC has a story today. Senate GOP tax reform bill seeks the repeal of the Obamacare individual mandate. So you have the House tax bill. This is not in it. And I asked Paul Ryan why not when he was here last week for an interview. And then the Senate releases their bill, and hot damn if it isn't there. And I'll tell you something, it's important. If we get rid of the Obamacare individual mandate, then we have gutted Obamacare. That is a significant portion of repealing Obamacare. So let's go to the audio sound bites. And we're first going to focus on, now back sound bite number 3 and number 4. This is a replay of the interview back on November 7th that I did with the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. There's something else here that I don't understand either. I saw this headline at thehill.com. It's a number of places. GOP unlikely to repeal Obamacare mandate in the tax bill. Now, Senator Cotton is leading an effort to include a repeal of the mandate in the tax bill. There's no language for this in the House bill. The Hill says that the chairman of the Ways and Means, Mr. Brady, expressed worry because trying to repeal the mandate could jeopardize the broader bill. You know, the reason you can do it, it's a tax because the Supreme Court said it was a tax in order to legalize Obamacare. So why can't you just get rid of that in one fell swoop?
Well, obviously, I'm in favor of getting rid of it. We're in favor of. We passed our repeal and replace of Obamacare in the House back in May. So the House is clearly on record for getting rid of this mandate and repealing the whole thing and replacing it with patient-centered health care. It's what you just said. The question is whether or not we have the support to do it in tax reform or not. And that's something that a lot of members are talking about with themselves. And so it's something that people are suggesting. Right now, the Ways and Means Committee, which is doing the tax law, is focused on tax policy. They're not focused on anything else at this time.
It would be so great to get rid of that. You get rid of that, and you've taken the guts and the heart and the soul out of Obamacare.
You have no argument with me.
Now, the Speaker Ryan back on November 7th, and it was clear that, well, we're not doing a Obamacare bill here. We're doing a tax bill. If they want to mess with it over there, that's fine. I'd just soon it'd be gone too. But we're not going to combine these two things here because we want to stay focused on the tax bill. So the Senate presents their bill and the individual mandate's gone. But before you start clapping, wait a minute. There's something I need to inform you that you may not have learned if you didn't read far enough in the story about this. But first, here is Speaker Ryan this morning, CNBC Squawk Box. He's talking to Becky Quick. She said, your membership, I mean the House Republicans, voting tomorrow on the tax reform bill. And it just got a lot more complicated by what the Senate chose to do overnight by wrapping a partial repeal of the Obamacare individual mandate. Now, we've always said tax reform is really tough, maybe nothing tougher than health care reform. So by putting these two together, what does that do in terms of what you have to do to convince your membership to stay loyal to your tax bill?
We've had the House votes to do that. We passed our repeal of the individual mandate back in May, but we never had the votes in the Senate. So what we didn't want to do is make tax reform harder than it already is, but it really is whether or not the Senate has the votes for this or not. So we're seeing what the Senate can do. If the Senate can get it through committee, if they can get it through the floor, then we'll meet them in conference and we'll assess at that time. We've passed this 2 or 3 times, most recently in May. Look, do we like the individual mandate? Of course we don't like the individual mandate.
We did it. We got rid of it. We already did it in our bill. But if they're going to put it in there, then we'll consider it. So if they put it in there, we'll consider it. So this is one of these things where obviously Speaker Ryan doesn't oppose it, didn't want to put it in the House bill. The Senate has put it in theirs, and that's cool. However, ladies and gentlemen, buried in the article here on the CNBC story, Senate GOP tax reform bill seeks repeal of Obamacare individual mandate. Let me read to you a line, as I say, buried in the article. Senator Thune also said the deal that agreed upon is to pass that bill alongside another bill known as Alexander Murray, which would restore key federal subsidy reimbursements to Obamacare insurers cut off last month by President Trump. So a little history. The Obamacare payoffs to the insurance companies in the form of subsidies were unconstitutional. They were illegal because that was federal spending which did not originate in the House of Representatives and thus was not in the legislation. It was Obama simply issuing executive order or executive action. And what had happened was the premium prices in Obamacare for middle-class, lower-middle-class people were priced in such a way that insurance companies couldn't hope to even break even, much less make a profit. So in exchange for the insurance companies offering premium prices where they would lose money, Obama said, don't worry, I'll subsidize you. We'll get money from the Treasury. We will subsidize you, insurance companies. Go ahead and offer voters the low premium so I get the credit for reducing costs. You go ahead and agree to price it where you lose money, and I'll subsidize you on the back end. And that's what happened. And that has been the way Obamacare has been functioning from the get-go. Now, those low prices are not low, but they're lower than they otherwise would have been. If the prices were from the get-go priced for the insurance companies to break even, make a profit, they would have really been unaffordable for most everybody. But the insurance companies, of course, you mean you're going to give us money? Obama said, that's right. They said, fine. So they lowered the prices, making it appear to be more affordable for middle and lower middle class people, of course, the poor, and Obama subsidized. Well, Trump came along after 9 months of patience, waiting for Congress to rid itself of Obamacare in general, to repeal it. When that had not happened, Trump's, okay, you know what? I'm going to get rid of these subsidies because I've got to kill this. This thing is going to implode. The way it's written, it will implode. And since Congress isn't going to get rid of it, I'm going to hasten the implosion. So he removed the subsidies. He took back the free money Obama was giving insurance companies. Move forward to the Senate tax bill. The Senate tax bill repeals the individual mandate. But another bill called Alexander-Murray features the reintroduction of subsidies to the insurance companies. Now, these would be legal if the House goes along with it, and if it's in legislation, it would then be legal. But the point is, the Republicans in the Senate want to find a way to continue or to reinstitute the kickbacks to the insurance companies. And so the play is, okay, we'll go along with your tax reform bill to an extent, they say to the House. And then they say, we'll even repeal the individual mandate. We'll take that burden away from you, so all you have to do is agree to it. But we're gonna put those subsidies back in. So that apparently is the fine print. Senator Thune told the Washington Post there are 50 Republican senators willing to support the mandate repealing tax reform bill, which would be enough to pass it, as long as Mike Pence is in there to break the tie, the vice president. Thune also said the deal, this is there being, also said the deal agreed upon is to pass that bill alongside something called Alexander-Murray, which would restore key federal subsidy reimbursements to insurers cut off last month by President Trump. The Democrat leader, Chuck U. Schumer, was scornful of the Republican decision with the usual bromides of cutting taxes for the rich and so forth. But that's where we are on this. And admittedly, it's further down the road than people thought it would get. So we shall see. We'll be right back after this, folks. Hang in there. Okay, back to the phones. We have time to squeeze one in here. It's Steve in Rochester, Minnesota. Great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
Hi, good. Thanks, Rush. Ditto's been listening since 1991. So I was reading through a Fox News story on the various senators, Republican senators, and their comments about this whole situation. And I read them one after another. There were many. And I was thinking as I got most of the way through it, this sounds a lot like your media montages vis-a-vis gravitas that I often hear on your show. That the similarities were striking in what they said. And it was an observation that led me to think that this is really a coordinated attack. And I think that should be the focus, not the he said, she said, but the fact that This guy's being attacked by the establishment big time.
Let me put it to you in another way, form of a question. Interesting observation, by the way, that you, in reading and listening to all of the different people opposing Judge Moore, they're all saying the same thing. Is that your point? Just like, when Cheney was mentioned as the potential vice presidential nominee for George W. Bush, about 85 media people, that's gravitas. This is to provide gravitas. They all have that word. You think the same thing's happening here with the response to Judge Moore?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so do you think, let me just ask you point blank, do you think that whether he did it or not, he's being railroaded?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yep. I think this is a coordinated attack, and what spurred me to think this was your comments yesterday about Mitch McConnell attacking Bannon's choice. And I thought, how else could you do this?
Well,
we are a month away from the election.
One thing about, let me tell you something. I don't think there's any doubt here. When Bannon went public and said that Judge Moore was the first of many candidates they're going to support in order to oust the Republican leadership, I don't think there's any question here that McConnell's reacting to that. Let me just ask you this. Have any of you do you ever remember Mitch McConnell or the Republican leadership ever going after a Democrat the way they're going after? You don't remember. McConnell, you don't remember McConnell ever going after a Democrat the way they're going. Okay. All right. Well, there's the ear-splitting tone. We got to take a break. Now, this is funny. Trump sprung the 3 UCLA basketball players from the Chi-Com jail. They were in there for shoplifting. UCLA basketball team was in China, and these 3 guys got pinched for shoplifting. And Trump, as part of his diplomatic efforts there, got them released. And apparently they haven't said thank you. And so Trump is publicly saying, are these UCLA players going to thank me for getting them out? And people are saying, that's so unpresidential. He should be above it. He shouldn't be requiring young children to have the knowledge that and maybe they're not Trump supporters anyway, so why should they thank him? But the drive-bys are all over this, as though it's some kind of controversy that Trump is asking whether or not these 3 basketball players will thank him for springing them out of jail. Now, yesterday in the first hour of the program, I purposely talked about Trump's trip to Asia. It was my belief, yesterday it is today too, that Trump's trip was a profound success. And it was a resounding success on many levels. And I focused on the skill that President Trump brought to the negotiating table with the Chi-Coms. And I'm not going to rehash it all. But just to refresh your memory, I highlighted the technique necessary to successfully negotiate with Chi-Coms. They are not like us. They are not, Western civilization, Western culture is not theirs. This is not a criticism, it's an acknowledgement. Whereas we, in negotiating with ourselves or with other foreign countries, we have a belief system of mutual agreement, even if both sides remain unhappy when the deal's over. And it's often said, in fact, that a really good deal is when both sides are unhappy, which means that both sides got something the other side wasn't prepared to give, and that means it's good. It's good when you don't get everything you want. That would be selfish and unfair, and this has been an established negotiating tactic. It's part of our culture. I'm not putting it down. I'm not praising it. I'm just pointing it out. But the Chinese are totally different. They don't have anything like that attitudinally. They don't go into negotiations, whatever it is, negotiating human rights, civil rights, abuses, foreign trade deals. If it doesn't benefit China, they're not going to do it. If it's not something that they can claim is a victory, they're not going to do it. You can chalk it up to the need for self-esteem and respect. Whatever the psychological reasoning behind it, the Chinese literally do not have in their thinking vocabulary the idea that a deal is good if both sides are unhappy with it. In the Chinese world of negotiating, you don't do it if you're going to be unhappy with it when it's over. So you have to know that going in when you're going to start doing deals with the Chi-Coms. And remember, during the campaign, Trump did nothing but beat them up. So for 2 years, the Chi-Coms listened to Trump beat them up. Talked to them about how they are unfair, how they are cheaters, how they are currency manipulators. And so 2 years of that, and the Chi-Coms think they are ready for what's coming from Trump. When in fact, Trump, if he thought that he was going to be elected president, was already beginning his negotiations by starting out with the outrageous. His technique is ask for 3 times what you'll settle for. Ask for 3 times what you really want. It's the only way to get what you really want. You have to be able to appear to be coming down. You have to appear to be able to be throwing things out, things that you want, in order to get what you want. So you start 3 times higher. But Trump also knew that whatever it was, the Chinese, when it was over, had to think they won. The Chinese had to think that, on balance, it was a good deal for them. And here is how I explained it on the program yesterday. North Korea is the elephant in the room. Trump wants help from Xi Jinping on neutralizing Kim Jong-un. But Xi Jinping's got no interest in doing that for the sake of humanity, for the betterment of the world. If getting rid of the North Koreans doesn't benefit the Chinese, to hell with it. He doesn't care the instability of the world, except as it might affect China. So that's the key. So you have to appeal to the Chinese on the basis that, look, I want to make a new trade deal with you. Now, remember, Trump started out on the campaign trail telling us he's going to be tough. The Chi-Coms have been getting away with murder because Americans are so stupid. But those days are over. The free ride of the Chinese is over. So they've been hearing that for 2 years. So they're expecting Trump to come in and strip everything away, take away all the benefits they have, all the advantages. He didn't do that. He gave them favorable trade deals, but they have to help us with Kim Jong-un. So neutralizing Kim Jong-un then equals a benefit to the Chi-Coms. Right. Remember now, the Chinese went to them, the North Koreans, doing something that might neutralize the North Koreans or mitigate them. It's not about making the world safer. It's not about humanity. It's not about right and wrong with the Chinese. It's all about, when this is all over, do we benefit? Do we win? And Trump realized that the Chinese are not going to make the North Koreans more important than themselves. What Trump wanted was more favorable trade deals with them. They were afraid Trump was going to start from scratch and be really tough. That was not Trump's starting position. Trump gave them very favorable deals that they could claim were a win for them. But the price was weighing in on the North Koreans. So this morning on CNN's New Day, the co-host is Fredo Cuomo, and he's talking to the former NSA director, Michael Hayden. I think Hayden was also at CIA. But regardless, he's not a Trump fan. Hayden has never been a big Trumpist, more like a never-Trumper. So Fredo says to Michael Hayden, China is sending a special envoy to North Korea this week. The president has repeatedly called on China to put more pressure on North Korea over its nuke program. Mr. Hayden, is this proof of progress? Should we see this development as a reflection of Trump's effectiveness?
I think the timing suggests that's true. So you've got a bit of a ray of light, maybe a breath of fresh air here. The Chinese trying to amp up their pressure on the North Koreans. I think we can rely on them to amp up the pressure a bit, to have Kim the youngest tone down the rhetoric, maybe stop testing for a while. This is pass-fail for Kim Jong-un. This is about his and his regime's survival.
Well, bingo! Did I not lay it all out for you yesterday? Not to be braggadocious, don't misunderstand, but that's been the first hour on this, the first half hour essentially, and this is why. Because this is a huge deal, and you're not going to see Trump credited. You're not going to see anything of the sort. All you're going to see is Trump's unfit. Trump has no business being president. Trump doesn't even know who these people are. Trump has no business talking to Chicoms. Trump has no business in North Korea. All he does is insult the North Korean guy as short and fat. We can't have that son president. When in truth, Trump succeeded in getting Xi Jinping to tell the short, fat, little pot-bellied dictator in North Korea to dial it back. Now, we'll see if it actually happens. But it's in China's benefit to do it. China is not going to allow North Korean interests to supersede its own. Now, if Trump had gone over there and in a very bellicose manner demanded that Xi Jinping tone down that guy or else, it would have been an abysmal failure. The Chinese reaction was, you don't come over here and tell us what to do. That's our ally. Screw you, in diplomatic language. But that isn't what Trump did. Trump gave them something that they didn't think they were going to get, trade-wise, that B constituted, in their way of thinking, a win. To now it's in their best interests to dial back North Korea in order to maintain this newfound good relationship that China has with the Trump administration. It was really, really, you have to say, well done. And as I say, I doubt you're going to hear this perspective of it. I mean, even Hayden here, in his answer, was very begrudging. Well, I think the timing suggests, yes, that's true. President was effective. So you have a bit of a ray of light. You have to admit it because it is true. So that's that. Now, we'll take a break here, come back with, we're either going to get back to the phones or we're going to return to the fertile ground of sexual perversion and harassment and abuse in the world of politics and entertainment. Do not go away. Yes, sir. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. El Rushbo, immensely enjoying my time with the audience. It's another way of saying doing the show today. 800-282-2882 if you want to join us. Here's Rich in Racine, Wisconsin. Great to have you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous, boss. How you doing today?
Fine and dandy. Thank you for asking.
I live in the heartland of, mid-America. Paul Ryan's my representative, which means I have no representation at all. So,
now.
You gave me a good piece of information that they're trying to, put that in where they're going to reimburse the insurance companies. And that just doesn't. Just doesn't seem right.
Wait. It's not Ryan, though. That's a Senate provision that they're going to...
Oh, believe me, they're going to try to use that as a negotiating tip.
Okay.
They're not as good as Donald at getting the best end of a deal. I'm just not that confident that they're going to walk away. They're going to screw it up. In my humble opinion, I think they're going to blow this. I don't have, and right down to everything that's going on with the Alabama election.
Wait. They're going to blow what?
Tax reform. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to choke. Something's going to go wrong. I think Mitch is, honestly, I don't think he wants to be on the Trump team.
Who? Ryan?
And Ryan's, I think he's gotten, actually, I think he might have got the word because it got to the point where I got on a first-name basis with the guy at his office because people from his district are constantly calling everybody I talk to isn't happy with our representation. I mean, just the way things are going.
Okay, I misheard. You said it's Mitch that you don't think wants Trump to win. But you realize what will happen if they don't get this done, right?
I don't believe they want to run it. I don't. I think they're all in this all together. I think that the establishment takes care of the establishment. I think if it wasn't for you and Sean and Mark Levin and others, we would be on our own out here.
Well, here's the thing. If they don't do this, if this doesn't get done, they are in really big trouble in 2018. And a lot of these guys, in order to stay in the establishment, they have to win elections. Not everybody in the establishment has to win elections, but members of the House and the Senate, they have to. And if they don't get this done after the year that they've had, if this doesn't happen, or if it happens and if it ends up not being at all what they are saying it is, there's going to be hell to pay at the ballot box in 2018. And I think they know this. They have stalled and they've delayed throughout the whole year on Obamacare. It's an entitlement, and I don't think they ever wanted to take that away. I don't think the Republicans ever want to be the ones go down in history and take money away from the poor. Is a way it'd be treated. It's a way it'd be reported. But tax reform, that's a Republican signature issue. That's a Republican signature ID issue. They've got to do this. But let me tell you something I heard, and numerous places. Last night there was a town hall meeting on the Fox News channel, and Paul Ryan, your representative, was one of the roundtable guests or one of the town hall guests. And as you know, when I had him interviewed here, was interviewing, I said, what's one takeaway? What should people know about it? It's a tax cut, Rush. It's a tax cut for the American people. Well, some people have taken the guts of the deal, and they have been measuring various aspects of the tax reform plan with real life circumstances. And they have found some middle class people, I forget the exact example, but somebody, a husband and wife, make $127,000, 3 kids in school, da-da-da-da-da. They have found some examples, and Ryan was hit with this last night, where these families are going to have, at the end of it all, a tax increase. They're going to be paying more than they're paying now. And Ryan's answer was, well, you may be able to find some of those, but I'm telling you, he insisted, the average American, everybody's going to get a tax cut. You may be able to find an odd example here or there where it may not be the case. So he acknowledged that there might be some outlier cases where people will end up paying more even after getting a rate reduction, and it all has to do with the deductibility of property taxes and state and local taxes and some other things. But the point of this is that not everybody is going to get a tax cut, or not everybody is going to be paying less. That would be the more accurate way of saying this. And I don't think there's any excuse for that. And you know why this is the case? The reason why is because we have to find a way to pay for it. I would maintain to you that in terms of real dollars and cents, if Washington finds a way to quote unquote pay for this tax cut, then there isn't a tax cut. If when this is over, Washington collects the same amount of money from the same number of people, how can there have been a tax cut? I'm getting perplexed looks, so let me explain this in a moment. From the UK Guardian, climate action. Global climate action must be gender equal. Women bear the heaviest brunt of global warming and are less empowered to contribute solutions. I bet you can't wait to hear the details of this collection of absolute BS. And I have it for you when we get back. And here we go, folks, and I'm in a brand new air chair, brand new EIB official broadcast specialist chair. I'm told the old chair was squeaking a lot or making a lot of noise. I, of course, was unable to detect or hear that noise, but other eagle-eared people were, and so we just made the switch. Great to have you here, 800-282-2882, the Rush Limbaugh program, the most listened to radio talk show in America. And I think probably the program where the host knows the audience better than any other program and host. Now, it's just a sensation that I have out there. We have nearly 30 years together here, and I have a pretty good idea who everybody is and what everybody thinks, how everybody acts, lives, behaves in this audience, and I treasure it. The telephone number is 800-282-2882, and if you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Women apparently bear the heaviest brunt of global warming and are less empowered to contribute solutions. So a new action plan agreed to at the Bonn, Germany climate talks aims to reverse this inequality, writes Hilda Hein, the president of the Marshall Islands. I kid you not, the women of the Marshall Islands and the Pacific have been fighting colonialism and injustice for a long time. Now, I know these stories about climate change, but see, this is the great lesson. Climate change it's not about climate change, and it's not about global warming. It's about globalism and mass socialism worldwide. The women of the Marshall Islands bore the brunt of the long-term effects of nuclear testing, and women leaders brought these issues to the international stage. For women fighting for justice, including climate justice. You ever heard of climate justice? Do you have any idea what it is? You don't, because it's silly. For women, fighting for justice, including climate justice, can be downright dangerous. Last year was one of the deadliest for women fighting on the front lines for human rights and environmental justice. Environmental defenders are being killed at the rate of almost 4 every week across the world, a staggering toll that disproportionately affects female activists and indigenous leaders. Among the most high-profile cases was Honduran indigenous Lenca leader Berta Cáceres, who was murdered in 2016 by a gust of wind. And for every woman like Cáceres who is killed, dozens of others are threatened with the violence of heavy rain, the destruction of hailstones, and their homes and villages. Look, I'm adding some things to this, but environmental justice is murdering people? Injustice? Yet despite this perilous landscape where corporations and even the governments who are in their pockets threaten life itself, these brave women continue to stand up for freedom of expression and participation, for land rights and the rights of indigenous and rural communities, for sexual and reproductive health and rights, against harassment and gender-based discrimination. Remember, it's a climate change story, folks. And these women are fighting for the right to preserve a safe, livable environment for present and future generations. At the UN climate talks in Bonn, the cause of these courageous women is being amplified by a host of organizations working on gender and climate justice issues through the Women and Gender constituency. Together, they're working to raise awareness of the work already done by women on the ground to combat climate change, and also critically how climate policies should address their specific needs and responsibilities and ensure the realization of their climate rights. The tragic reality of gender and climate is that women, especially women of color, who are hardest hit, are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, but are far less likely to be empowered to cope because they have fewer resources such as power and access to money and technology. A multitude of structural barriers means they are far less likely to take up positions of political power and decision-making. And this goes on for 6 more pages. Global climate action must be gender equal. It's lunacy. It's abject lunacy. But you know what? This may be one of the best illustrations yet, the best exhibits of what climate change really is in terms of issues. And it isn't about the temperature. And it isn't about the weather, and it isn't about climate. It's not about any of that. It's all about the advancement of socialism and global governments and anti-freedom and liberty, anti-United States sentiments. Blame the United States for all of this gender inequality. All that is just asinine. And these people, by the way, are the majority. This is the majority of thinking in the United Nations. This is how most of them think. And this is how young leftists in America, this is what they aspire to. This is the stuff that turns them on. This is the stuff that energizes them and activates them. And it is literally stupid. It's literally devoid of any common sense. Now, back to my tax reform question. Remember, Paul Ryan was on a town hall on Fox last night, and they hit him with some scenarios of people who make $127,000 a year, $140,000. They have families, a certain number of kids. After the tax reform bill, if it becomes law, they will actually pay more in taxes, even with the rate reductions and all that. A number of people have taken the tax reform bill as it is, with the rate reductions and the differences in what you can and can't deduct. And they've applied the specifics to certain actual family examples. And they have found these examples. I don't know how many. I don't know how widespread it is. But when the selling point is every American will see their taxes cut, well, that may be true, but they may end up paying more. There's a big difference in your tax rate being cut and the effective tax rate you pay. And there's a big difference in your tax rate being cut and your total tax owed. And where this gets hairy is in the areas of the new reform law where certain property or state and local income taxes will no longer be deductible. Those people are going to see a rate reduction, and they're going to see the standard exemption doubled. But with certain deductions taken away, they're actually going to be paying a few more dollars in total tax, even after receiving reductions in their rates and so forth. And so Speaker Ryan was hit with these examples and asked, how can you say you're cutting taxes for everybody when these examples exist? And he said, well, just telling you, for the average American taxpayer, this is a great deal. Everybody is going to be paying less, or everybody's going to get a tax cut. Everybody getting a tax cut does not mean everybody is paying less. Now, you realize here that every aspect of this bill is done under a premise that must be adhered to. And that premise is that every one of these tax reforms must be paid for. What does that mean? What it means is that for every dollar lost, quote unquote, every dollar the government loses by having a taxpayer keep it, the government must reclaim that dollar somewhere else in order to pay for that dollar of tax cuts. So if the bill must be revenue neutral, if tax reform must be paid for, then simple mathematics tells me that if Washington is going to collect the same amount of money from the same number of people after tax reform, then what tax reform has there been Real tax reform would mean the government has less money when it's over. By definition, how does the government get its money? By taxing people, primarily, and also the manufacture and sale of weapons, international arms sales. Government has land that it buys and sells. But for the most part, the federal government is funded by taxing the income and productivity of people who work in the United States. The government takes a cut of everything everybody earns. Now, if the government's going to reduce its take, i.e., cut the tax rates, the percentages, then the government ought to end up with less money. But if their intent here is to, quote unquote, pay for this, what that means is the government cannot have less money after this is implemented. Now, I'm dealing here with the static analysis. I can hear some of you shouting at the radio, but Rush, if they cut taxes, it's going to raise revenue. Yes, it does. But the way it happens is that it creates more taxpayers. A genuine tax cut, a genuine tax rate reduction, specifically, folks, a genuine marginal rate cut will grow the economy. The reason is simple. More money is being kept in the economy. Less money is being taken from people and gone to Washington. More money is staying, therefore, in the U.S. economy. And whether that money is saved or whether it's invested or whether it's spent doesn't matter. All of that is happening within the U.S. economy. And as such, by definition, it cannot help but expand. And when that economy expands, businesses, many of them, not all, but many of them will also grow, and they will need more employees. And because they have more money to hire people because of tax cuts, they will create more taxpayers. And so cutting taxes creates more taxpayers by way of creating more jobs, and that's how the government gets additional revenue. I've often had people get stymied, because it's axiomatic. If there is a line where this no longer works, there's a point on a chart where it no longer works. But when you cut tax rates, the government ends up with more revenue. And to a lot of people, the mathematics of it doesn't work out. How can that be? How can Washington have more money after keeping less? Well, the way it happens is, and the way it happened in the 80s, and it happened like it had not happened before, more jobs were created and economic growth was skyrocketing, and more jobs are created, and that caused more growth, which caused more hiring, and the cycle went on for 8 or 10 years. And then we lived off that through the 90s and the Clinton years. And that's how. But if the objective of any government's tax cut plan is to end up where the government doesn't lose any money, then what tax cut has there really been overall? That's why this whole notion of paying for it, that's liberal talk. That's the way the Democrats approach government. And what it means is government can never get smaller. Government can never do with less. And, of course, we as conservatives, that's the objective, is to make government smaller, to make it more efficient, to get it more out of the way, because government doesn't produce anything. All government does is realign and redistribute wealth, but government does not create it. If anything, government destroys it. So the idea that after our massive tax reform plan here, the government's going to stay the same size, then how has there actually been a tax cut resulting in more money in the U.S. economy? But on the political side of this, they can't afford not to do this. This is, it's a signature issue for the Republicans. 2018 midterms are coming up. They've already close to blown it by not repealing Obamacare after 7 years of promises. You know that drill. And I think they're very much aware that they have to do this politically, regardless what the numbers end up being. There needs to be that grand celebratory ceremony at the White House Rose Garden where everybody is happy as they can be, and the signing ceremony takes place, and we announce that we're cutting taxes for the first time significantly since 1986. That they need that politically, and they know it, which is why I think they're going to do everything they can to make it happen. Let's take a quick time out. We will continue with much more right after this. Okay, those 3 UCLA players have now thanked President Trump for getting them out of jail. He wondered where the thank you. I know, they thank the Chi-Coms, too. Chi-Coms probably insisted on that. He said, your president told us to let you out, but we're the ones that unlocked the cells. And so when you get back, you better express gratitude to us, because we know where you are. And so the 3 UCLA players not only thanked Trump, but they thanked the Chi-Coms as well. Here is Gary in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Great to have you, Gare. What's up?
Maha, great to talk to you.
Thank you, sir, very much.
You probably are the only one in the country that can answer this question. When the Uranium One investigation goes full swing, whether or not they elect a special prosecutor, what happens to Mueller and who appointed him? They would be at least questioned, if not investigated, and would they have to resign or step aside? And what happens to the current investigation that's going on with all this Russian crap?
Wait a minute now. I need to set the table here. What? You are under the impression that there will be a special counsel to investigate the Uranium One deal?
I certainly hope so.
Okay, and so if there is one, you think that this would impact Mueller in... How do you think it would impact him? Because he didn't look into it, that he would have to resign in disgrace because he's been exposed as somebody who...
No, because he would be under investigation with part of the Uranium One deal.
Oh, I got you, yeah. Well,
wouldn't that be a conflict?
Yeah, but it's a conflict in the swamp. Therefore, it's not a conflict.
Well, yeah.
Look, a conflict is only a conflict if somebody's going to say it is.
Okay.
Well, what I mean by that is the swamp's got its own court, if you will. I mean, look at Obama. Obama was acting outside the Constitution every day, practically, when it came to Obamacare.
And no one challenged him at all.
That's exactly my point. So if nobody's going to challenge him on it, then what's going to make him stop?
An indictment?
Well, that's my point. There wasn't an indictment. There wasn't even a call for an investigation. There were people that went on TV and whined and moaned about it, but there wasn't any serious effort to stop. Like, everybody talks about Sessions and his lack of effectiveness as a attorney general, and they're trying to drum up again here that Sessions was lying about meeting with Russians and his recusal is only half-baked and so forth. Let me tell you something, folks. Jeff Sessions is as clean and pure as the wind-driven snow compared to Eric Holder. We hear all this talk about Trump, he can't talk to Sessions. Trump can't tell Sessions what to investigate. Trump. What do you think happened with Obama and Holder? For crying out loud, I think Eric Holder, if you want to talk about corruption at the Department of Justice, that's where you have to look. Just day-to-day political corruption of supposedly an agency or an area of the bureaucracy that's supposed to be out of bounds for any partisan impulse. My goodness. And everybody just overlooked it because nobody was willing to go up against Obama on anything like that because of the racial component. But let me tackle something else you said when we get back. Now, about the last caller, special counsel looking into Uranium One. Uranium One, to categorize it properly, Uranium One is not so much a national security issue as it is a corruption story. And right in the middle of it, right smack dab in the middle of it, the Clintons. Now, whether or not there's a special counsel appointed, this came up yesterday when Sessions faced his grueling interrogation at the House Judiciary Committee. And here's the story. This is from the Washington Post. Attorney General Jeff Sessions' public suggestion that he may appoint a special counsel to investigate Hillary has alarmed current and former Justice Department officials who fear that Sessions will further politicize the embattled agency. Sessions said at a congressional hearing that he will weigh recommendations from senior prosecutors on whether to appoint a special counsel over the uranium company deal and other issues, including donations to the Clinton Foundation. Such an appointment could give Trump and Republicans a political counterweight to the ongoing work of Robert Mueller. Now, Sessions actually, if you look at what he said, he threw, it wasn't cold water, but he threw water on the idea of a special counsel. He openly said that for there to be a special counsel, there has to be a crime, and he doesn't know of one yet. As I heard him answer this, I didn't hear him say that they are likely or are intending or trending toward a special counsel. I heard him say just the exact opposite, which, believe me, is going to frustrate a lot of people. But this story here, Attorney General Sessions' public suggestion, blah, 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 alarmed current and former Justice Department, meaning ex-Democrats, who fear he will further politicize. Further politicize? This agency has been politicized thanks to Obama and Holder, just like the IRS was. What is happening now is an attempt to depoliticize it. That's what Sessions thinks his mission is. Sessions believes the law is pure. In terms of an attorney general who holds the law in the deepest respect and reverence, you couldn't find anybody better. But as such, Jeff Sessions does not look at the law as a weapon, not the way the Democrats do. The Democrats look at every government bureaucracy as its own potential weapon to use against political enemies. Jeff Sessions doesn't see it that way at all. Whereas Rod Rosenstein can appoint Mueller as a special counsel without a crime. The regulations in the Justice Department that govern the appointing of a special counsel require there to be a crime. You can't start an investigation without a crime. Well, here there isn't a crime. There is no crime that Mueller is investigating. He's looking for as many as he can drum up and find. Sessions saying essentially that there isn't a crime with Hillary and uranium and is baffling to me, because it seems to me that there more of the requirements for a special counsel are met in pursuit of the Clintons than what's been impaneled here to pursue Trump. And this is why there are those who think that Jeff Sessions could be replaced by somebody who would be better served to use the Justice Department as, well, let's say properly, because there is crime, there is criminal activity, clearly suggestions and allegations of it that we know of with Uranium One and with the things that Clintons have been involved in. Far more criminal activity that appears obvious than anything they're going after Trump on. So there's a huge conflict here, a divergence, and a lot of people are frustrated. But this is a long way around saying I'm not convinced at all that Sessions is going to appoint a special counsel on anything. But this business here that former DOJ people, which all that means is former Clinton and former Obama DOJ members, are worried about further politicization. That's such a crock. They're worried about getting caught. They're worried about being named. They're worried about being exposed. Politicization, my ass. Republicans don't have half the talent at politicizing things that the Democrats do. which is one of the greatest source of frustrations we experience here. Here's another story related. This is in the New York Times. Lock her up becomes more than a slogan. President Trump did not need to send a memo or telephone his AG to make his desires known. He broadcast them for all the world to see on Twitter. The instruction was clear. The Justice Department should investigate Hillary Clinton from last year's campaign. However they were delivered, Trump's demands have ricocheted through the halls of the Justice Department, where Jeff Sessions has now ordered senior prosecutors to evaluate various accusations against Hillary and report back on whether a special counsel should be appointed. Lock her up becomes more than a slogan. Look, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing what Sessions is saying as conclusive evidence that he wants a special prosecutor, wants to name one. I'm seeing, in fact, maybe the opposite. Hope I'm wrong. Back in a minute. Here's Darrell in Effingham, Illinois, as we head back to the phones. Great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
Mr. Limbaugh, it's an honor, sir. A couple of real quick points.
Yes.
I'm retired military, so I took another job, and I traveled from the left to the right to the north to the south coast and everywhere in between. I was down in Alabama, and I had no desire to listen to the big football game going on the other night, so I was channel surfing. And it didn't matter what genre of music you were listening to, be it country, rock and roll, rap, it didn't matter. All the radio announcers had the same thing to say, and I heard this over and over again, and it struck me. They said, as soon as Judge Moore won the primary over Mr. Strange, get ready, here it comes. They knew it was going to get ugly. They knew. One of the guys said the fertilizer was going to hit the ventilator. The people of Alabama, this is no big surprise to them.
No, in fact, the two most recent polls that we have out of Alabama show Judge Moore up in both polls. In one poll, he's up 6 points, and another poll, he's up 10. And these are likely voters. And this may be creating a backlash. One of the things that is incumbent in these attacks on Moore is his voters are being attacked. The guy won the primary. And so the people that made that happen are also being attacked right along with him, not by name, but as everybody goes after Judge Moore as an idiot and a pervert and whatever. Well, his voters are realizing, hey, they're saying that about us too.
One of your callers made the connection that, you should put these people under oath and get a statement from them and everything else. They have not done that yet, but what they did do on one of the stations was read a transcript of the accusations made against Judge Moore. In that transcript from this woman now, 35, 40 years ago, she said that she gave her telephone number to the judge for him to call and contact her. There's a problem. Cell phones didn't exist 35, 40 years ago. Unless you were an extremely wealthy family, you had one phone line. So you're going to tell me that a teenage girl gave her mother's telephone number to a judge to contact her.
Well, he wasn't a judge
on a date.
He wasn't a judge then. He didn't become a judge until 1994 after he left the Democrat Party. He was a Democrat back then.
I apologize.
I love this. He became a judge. He was elected.
Exactly right, sir. But still, you have to swallow down this huge, jagged pill.
No, we don't want to talk about swallowing here, but I'll tell you what, the business about a phone, have they said that it was a cell phone that he was calling on? I haven't seen that, so I don't know. Folks, we're going to skedaddle out of here pretty quickly. I really, really appreciate your being here with us each and every day, and I appreciate your sophistication and your understanding of how things happen on this program. Look forward to it each and every day. Have a wonderful rest of the day, 21 hours from now, and we will be right back.